Welcome to the Deliverance Project. Here are your hosts, Anthony and Melissa.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Deliverance Project. I'm your host, Anthony.
Hello, I'm Melissa.
We're so glad that you're here. I'm going to quickly say that I apologize. I actually have walking pneumonia, so I have not been able to talk a lot. I'm just kind of drinking some hot water with honey, trying to get my voice right. For those of you that listen to the Struggle series, you know that we had to do an emergency bonus episode last week because I couldn't record the chapter because I couldn't talk. So that chapter will be released tomorrow or Thursday, whenever you listen to this. And we should be able to make it through today's episode, but you might have to hear me cough once or twice. We'll try to edit that out the best we can. So
quick note. So if anyone has been sick or coughing or not feeling well for at least a week, please go to the doctor because walking pneumonia is going around. We've known a couple of our friends that has had it and so just be careful. It could be dangerous.
I'm laughing because she had to scold me to go to the doctor
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, just trying to suffer through it. So yes, she is correct.
Be very careful.
It's definitely going around, and we've heard it not just from here where we are, but in a lot of different states. So it seems to be floating around. So yeah, don't be stubborn like me. Go to the doctor right away. So back to business. When we are recording an episode like this one today, we just want to remind you that this podcast is here not to judge, but we are here to kind of help you with some of your struggles that we consider to be spiritual warfare, demonic attack. And so that's what the podcast is about. We're here to help you not be judgmental. And so the letter that we're going to read today is actually one from a listener that'll kind of help us do that. She wrote the letter from something that happened in the past that is going to try to help maybe some of you with children to kind of always take seriously when your kids are talking about things that they're seeing in their rooms, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so remember, as we go through this, if you are a parent, we're not judging you, because I'm sure we've all done it, and it was definitely done to us when we were kids because we're Gen X kids. So just shut the light off and shut your mouth and go to sleep.
Exactly.
Pretend it isn't there, type thing. So that's what we're here for. And just to kind of take that a little further, if you are new with us, we are definitely just a podcast that wants to have you have a safe place to tell your stories of spiritual warfare, demonic attack. Even if you feel like you're not sure that these issues might be spiritual, but you just have an issue that's kind of nagging you and it doesn't seem quite normal, we believe that that's probably the beginnings of a spiritual attack that will manifest into something bigger if it isn't addressed. Thus, the Deliverance Project. We don't want you to call in when the demon is fully manifested as a possession or an oppression in your life. Although we would love to take that call and help you, we want to catch it as soon as possible and kind of become a place where you can educationally understand how these demonic entities work and why they're after you in the first place. So that's what we're here to do. So before we jump to the episode, we are in a massive kind of push place in our lives in terms of our other podcast, the other things that we do with the Struggle series. And that is the books that I wrote a while back entitled the Struggle series. And book 3, The Return, is actually out for purchase. So the release is in its beginning stages. And for those of you who are not real familiar with this, you know, there'll be a lot more media and, you know, we're getting a commercial done and things like that. But the books are out for purchase. So if you're somebody who listens, who've been kind of waiting for that, and maybe you listened an episode or so ago where we talked about, you know, what these books are about and that type of a thing, you can purchase those books. Right now, they are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I think the digital, the paperback, and the hard copies are all available. We will be getting our shipment in a while, and then we will put those on the website and let you know. when they are here. We're probably going to do a thing where the price will be about the same on all the platforms. But if you order it from us, we might be able to throw a little personalized message in there for you if you buy them from us. So we're working on that. We'll let you know when that comes into fruition. Now, the Return, Book 3, is actually available to listen to on our other podcast entitled The Struggle Series. You could find that wherever you listen to this podcast. And that is narrated by me. And we've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. We put that out because we were kind of losing momentum with the Struggle Series. We released the first 2 books. And then Book 3, The Return, because of, hurricanes and things like that, our publisher was delayed. And so we didn't want to have the Struggle Series podcast just kind of die and then try to revive it. So we just made the decision to record The Return in audio format. And so if you are a long-time listener, you may have already listened to that book, but we'd still encourage you to buy it. It's basically the same story, but we would, of course, love the support. But, if you're like me, you love those books. I did buy the digital copies for my phone, but I actually just love the feel of the book in my hand.
Oh, yeah, me too.
That's kind of what I'm all about. And so, we're kind of at that place where we are, excited. And so you're going to hear us pushing this a lot. And we apologize for that, but that's part of what we do here at the Struggle Series. If you happen to be new, let me just take one more minute to explain to you. These books are what we call Christian paranormal. They're like horror novels, detective novels, Christian gospel message, all rolled into one, about a deliverance minister who goes out to help people. But of course, we had to spice it up with some murders and some twists and turns and things like that. We think you'll enjoy them.
Oh, yeah, they're great. I love it.
Yeah, most of the feedback we get is always, the negative is always, why are you a Christian minister who's writing horror novels, But on the positive side, we always get, it's almost like 6 out of 10 responses are, these books are like a movie. When you're reading them, you can see the movie in your head. And that's purposely, the way I wrote them purposely. So, we hope that you would kind of take that and maybe run with it, give it a try. I always tell people I'm not trying to make money. I don't set the prices. The publisher does. They're not the cheapest books you'll buy, but of course it is brand new. But buy the digital. I mean, it's $9.99, I think. Buy the digital if you're into that. I actually make more money if you buy the digital than the hard copies, I think, percentage-wise.
Right.
So, I probably shouldn't say that, but I just did. So I'm telling you, if you want to save money but still have it in a digital format, it doesn't hurt us financially. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Oh, don't forget to like us and subscribe and all that stuff on all the platforms. Even if you listen on Spotify and you also listen to some other podcasts on Apple, go to Apple and like us and subscribe there. Just helps us out. And then we also post these in thumbnail format on YouTube and Rumble. And so we would love to have you kind of like and subscribe there. And, some people, we realize it's not a huge following, but some people watch it on YouTube or Rumble every week, even though there's no video, because maybe they're sitting at their computer and that's what's easy for them to put in the background.
Exactly,
so we're going to keep going on that.
Yep.
The Struggle Series does have all of book 1 now released in video format for book 1, which is called The Struggle. And there is some kind of AI video that we do there to kind of make those stories a little more popular. So if you are a fan of ours, but you've never looked at that, please go over there on YouTube or Rumble, like and subscribe there and check it out, because that might be a better way for you to watch the book. Melissa and I watch a lot of YouTube programming, like when we're kind of just chilling at night, that has a lot of AI video. So it's not actual, like a produced video. We just kind of select some AI images and it kind of helps tell the story. So if you don't mind, if you have the time, please like, subscribe, check us all out there.
Leave some great review comments.
Obviously, if you can leave a review, 5 stars are great. If you're going to leave a 1 star, probably just skip past us because you don't like us anyway. But, do what you do. All right. So, Melissa, let's jump to this episode before my voice gives away here.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on imaginary friends? I've never asked you this, I don't think, but did you ever have an imaginary friend?
No, I have not. And honestly, I don't know anyone that had an imaginary friend. like growing up, none of my siblings had any. I don't remember any of my cousins saying that they have an imaginary friend. Even like my friends, as I got older and they started having children, I've never heard any of them say that their child has an imaginary friend. So is that very common or?
It's interesting. It's interesting that you say that because I think I kind of asked you that wondering because I think I can remember one cousin of mine. I'm like the oldest of the grandkids on my mother's side of the family. And so, we were pretty close knit. The family's huge now. I think my grandma has like 8 million grandkids and great grandkids and great great grandkids. But, when we were younger, the smaller group of us were all pretty tight. And I think I can remember one of them, and I'm vaguely remembering that she had some sort of imaginary friend. But we had never really heard of this. And so it was like one of those things where like, what is this? Like it was weird. But then it almost seemed like clockwork. There was like some programs about it. Like, when we were kids, they had some creepy like paranormal stuff, like Unsolved Mysteries, the old school one with that creepy music that would come on and freak you out. So it must have been a show like that or whatever. And then I think, when you first watched the episode of the Sally House where that psychic Peter James came in, and that I think that show was called Sightings. That has to be from the early 90s.
I remember that. Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it was
90s.
right about that time where we started to kind of see it come in the media. So I actually, and you, now that you're speaking, aren't really people that knew about this, but the more that I've studied it, I think it's kind of common.
Very common, yeah.
And
that's what I was thinking.
And I, because my first instinct, and please, listeners, hear this the right way, I thought it might be more of a cultural thing. And not to, I'm not going to say which cultures, I'll just leave that, but because it didn't make sense any other way. But then now I've done so much study on it that it goes across cultures. But it almost seemed like it made like an increase. So maybe it wasn't such a big thing once upon a time, and now it became a big thing.
Or maybe it's something that no one really talked about. Like, do you go and tell your girlfriend, oh, that's just this imaginary friend, and just keep going? Like,
yeah, that could be true.
Something. But now that there's more people talking about it, demons, that is, it is a little more popular. Because they would say, oh, yeah, that's my imaginary friend. They always start out as an imaginary friend.
Yeah, it always does seem to start as an imaginary friend, but then it's really not that. And so this concept, I think I've always considered it to be a negative. But I'm wondering if you've ever thought of this, and it's something that was popping in my head as I was kind of going through this. Can imaginary friends be positive? Because I think they can if it's an angel that's coming to a kid. Does that make sense?
I've heard stories about that there are, like angels, and they're very nice and they're sweet and they're not evil. Like the kid talks positive about their imaginary friend when it's nice. Like to go have tea with them and eat cookies with them and things like that, not trying to scare them. But then again, the mean ones start out nice and then they turn evil.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just really haven't heard I haven't had a lot of conversations about imaginary friends with friends and people, mainly just on television, and that's all like Hollywood fiction, that type things.
Well, and how many of your friends would admit to you that their kids have an imaginary friend because they might be worried about judgment?
Exactly, yeah.
But I've actually heard of stories where children will say, like, just one story in particular I could think of, and I wouldn't even know where to find it to source it, but it was like there was a bunch of domestic violence in a home, and the little girl would talk about how Jesus or an angel or something like that became her friend, and when the fighting was going on, this being would like take her and hide her behind the couch and sing songs to her and things like that. So that can't be demonic.
Oh, yeah.
And so she described this as my friend comes. So when my mommy and daddy are fighting, and this is like physical domestic violence, that he would like take her behind a couch or something and kind of, comfort her or kind of shield her from the abuse.
Yeah.
So that would be considered an imaginary friend to people, because let's get honest, the whole concept of an imaginary friend is that the parents think that the kid just made this thing up in her or his head and that it's not real. But we, as, kind of believers in the demonic, think it's probably real just because you don't see it. And we've seen so many horror movies where like the parents will walk by the room and the kids talking to somebody and they fling the door open and all of a sudden the chair across the little table falls over. And the little girl says, my friend doesn't like you and just ran out the room or whatever. Well, that's demonic, in my opinion. But so
and then when they reveal something like personal about the family, or like I remember seeing that one story about this young kid was almost killed in an accident, and then he started like talking to Jesus and things like that, and he can see like his mom lost a baby and they never told the son about the baby because it was like 5 years before he was born, and that he was talking to the baby.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
that's crazy. So again, what we're going to just say is that, we don't want anybody who's listening to feel judged if you don't believe that imaginary friends are real. You just think they're a figment of your imagination, because that could be a possibility in some cases. A kid that's very isolated kind of can create their own fantasy world. We all do that, even as adults, daydreaming and things like that. We could say that sometimes these things are demonic. And as Melissa said, they always seem to come nice at first or represent themselves to be a little kid and then turn out to be a demon. They've made about 100 horror movies about that. But then we're also saying that there is a possibility that some of these beings that are becoming a quote unquote friend to your child are maybe angelic or maybe sent there to shield your kid from something. And so some of you listening will say, well, I don't believe in this, but I believe in that. We just wanted to spend some time there because, you know, I think it's easy for a paranormal podcast to assume what every horror movie has turned it into, which is imaginary friends are not really good. They're going to pretend to be good. And then they're going to be a demon that kills your family in the end. And, that's something to be cautious about for sure. But the whole maybe big question is, how do you know an imaginary friend is bad? Because if it is just a figment of a kid's imagination, then, they'll grow out of it. If it's angelic, you don't want to tell the kid to send their friend away if it's a blessing to them. So what would be the criteria if a imaginary friend is bad? What do you think?
I would say if the child starts acting different, like more mouthy, or
Sure.
just kind of changing, going from like a sweet little girl or a nice little boy to like just very mean, beating up people in school, getting in trouble, things like that. Disobeying.
Yeah, like a big shift
Just
in
a
the
shift.
personality. And so like that's where people would be like, well, that's, kids do that. Yeah, but the kid was good. An imaginary friend showed up and now they're bad.
Especially if they mention the imaginary friend, or if they mention, oh, that was Tommy. Well, who is Tommy? Or that was Susie.
Yeah.
Who is that? So kind of put two and two together if that happens.
Sure. one of the things that popped in my head was if the imaginary friend is trying to isolate you from your family. So
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
your mommy doesn't really love you or your dad is a jerk. And now if dad is a jerk and a violent crazy guy that you should be afraid of and the imaginary friend is trying to shield you, then you can probably say that imaginary friend is good.
Mm-hmm.
But if the parents are both loving parents and the imaginary friend is waiting for the parents to discipline a child, and then the imaginary friend is going, see, they don't love you.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, you would see the shift in the kids' like affection levels towards the parents, the obedience,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So there is a lot to say about, what you should look for in terms of an imaginary friend.
Now, as a therapist, did you have any patients? Well, your patient was mainly adults, right?
I did
Did that?
have a small, like when I first got in the field, I saw a lot of teenagers because when you get into the psychology field, they always want you to start with kids
Mm-hmm.
because they can't find enough therapists to work with kids, I think. So it's kind of like you earn your stripes there. It's the same with ministry. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
ministers start out as a youth minister
Right.
to
Yeah.
see if they can handle the abuse and then they move you up. But so I did have some kids, but I definitely didn't specialize in it. So I mostly specialized in, young, teenagers, young adults. I did have some, I can remember seeing one 9-year-old boy that had a lot of behavioral problems because like they had tried 5 or 6 other therapists. And because I was kind of known for being kind of a not beat around the bush type of a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
the parent said, you helped my older nephew who was like 18. Would you at least give it a try? And I did. And I think I helped him kind of in that stage. And then I transferred him somewhere else because I'm not built for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you should not see, as a therapist, you should not see people you're not educated and skilled in helping.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it just wasn't my specialty. I'm too direct. And so like I learned some of the techniques. Like if you always tell a kid, like if you tell a kid, tell me about your family. I mean, that's like, so abstract of a concept for a
Mm-hmm.
kid that's very concrete in their thinking. So you say, do me a favor and draw me a picture of your family. And that picture will tell you more than their words could
Exactly.
ever tell
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
So like, here's me and mommy and my sister. And well, who's this over here? That's daddy because he's never home. So we don't really see him a lot. So when we do see him, he's over here in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
You see, a kid's not going to be able to say, well, my mom is basically our primary caretaker. My dad
Right.
worked, but the
Exactly.
picture
Okay.
tells that story.
Okay.
So I learned a couple little skills like that, tried to use some of that, but I'm
While I
more,
was going, like imaginary friend wouldn't be considered or headed that way as a multiple personality type
or
disorder or
schizophrenia.
schizophrenia or something or
It could be the beginnings of it. The problem is you cannot diagnose a child with
mm-hmm.
any of these disorders because issues like imaginary friends could be
Because they're
more of
still
a
developing and
emotional response to
yeah.
loneliness or some sort of childhood issue
Mm-hmm. Okay.
that is not true schizophrenia, whereas an adult is hearing voices.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
why you can't diagnose a kid. So maybe to answer the question you're asking, I never had a kid with an imaginary friend.
Okay.
So now let's jump to kind of this letter because I think it'll help us kind of take this to where we want it to go. We had a previous episode or two about parents believing your kids. And so we'll kind of have you follow that logic as we go through this letter.
Mm-hmm.
It says, hello, Deliverance Project crew. My name is Selena, and I have recently found your podcast. I've gone back and started listening to old episodes. I have to admit, I got confused for a little bit when you changed the name, but I totally get it. Your content is intriguing, and I love the educational episodes. If you're new and you don't know what she's talking about, this
Mhm.
used to be called the Freedom from the Struggle podcast. We changed the name because people didn't know what struggle they were trying to get freedom from. So that's basically it. So we changed it to be a little more direct as to what we do here. So
Mhm.
she probably went back to some of the old episodes and saw the old artwork and the
Exactly,
old,
the name.
the old name.
Yeah.
Even when I was recording the struggle series, some of the like the teaser in the front says, if you like this content, listen to Freedom from the Struggle. So on the video, I have to put like a little message that says this is now called
The
the Deliverance
Deliverance
Project.
Project.
So
Okay.
that's what that means if you're a brand new listener and don't know what she's talking about. Let's get back to the letter. I also love that you're trying to help people to know the truth about demons, and that's exactly what we're here for.
Mhm.
I have a story about my past that I hope can help some of your listeners to understand that not only are demons real, but they are always pursuing us, which is very true. They hate us.
Mhm.
It says, when I was 6 years old, we moved into a different house. So right away, Melissa, here's that life changed.
Change.
And so kids are now lonely. They've lost their friends. This is where psychology would say, this is why she developed an imaginary
Imaginary
friend.
friend.
She says, I have two older brothers, and I was the typical baby of the family. I was someone who was scared of the dark, and this big house left my room very far from my parents' bedroom. My brothers' rooms were right across the hall, and they would get mad at me that I would go into their rooms at night when I got scared. That was until one night when I heard a little girl's voice coming from the corner of my room. I had a nightlight, but there were still parts of the room that were dark. I was just about ready to run when she said, "Don't be afraid. I'm here to help you. I'm your friend." That's creepy, man.
Right?
That's creepy. But maybe for a kid, if she represents herself to be a kid, kids are taught to be disarmed by other kids.
Exactly. Other kids, yeah.
Yeah. So they're not afraid of them. They go to school with them and whatever. So,
Mhm.
of course, I was leery, but she came out of the corner and walked to the side of my bed. She was just a little girl about my age. She had brown hair set in pigtails. She was wearing a nightgown like the ones I used to wear. So she was kind of dressed similar. So she
She
looked like a typical kid at night.
Mhm.
She was also carrying one of my teddy bears. She sat on the edge of my bed and told me that she was there to keep me safe. I look back now and think, how stupid was I to believe this? I don't think you're stupid at all. I think that
I
was the
know, that's
purpose of it.
exactly. It's like you're 6 years old.
Now, if the thing would have came out looking like a monster, but if it's a little girl, I'm here, you're scared, she's gentle, talking to you, that
Mhm.
type of thing.
You're in a new house, a new place, and so, yeah, we get it.
Yeah. It says, I guess because I was so scared, I was actually comforted by this little girl that said her name was Lucille. We sat up and talked for a long time until she finally told me that it was okay to go to sleep. She said she would look after me. I got scared to think I'm sorry. I get scared to think of this next part. But before I went to sleep, she said, I can come back tomorrow night if you want. All you have to say is, you are welcome to come into my room. So
That first door.
now that this woman is older, she's realizing that she opened a door to this thing. And of course, theologically, we can get crazy about, can a little kid actually give permission? Do they have that level of dominion and that type of thing? But we'll
Mhm.
save that for another podcast another time. So she continues, I can see now that this was a bad idea. Of course, I invited the little girl into my room night after night. It wasn't long before my family started to notice that my personality was changing. There you go, Melissa, right
Mhm.
there. I went from being afraid and needed someone around me at all time to not wanting to be around anyone. I would just go to my room and play with Lucille. When my mom asked me what I was doing in my room alone, I told her that I was playing with my new friend. Of course, my older brother started to make fun of me. I got very mad and stormed off. When I got to my room, Lucille told me that she would take care of my brother. I regretfully gave her permission. Yeah, you can see where that's going. Later that night, my brother was attacked in his room. I will try to get him to write in and tell his side of the story. And please, we would love to hear his side of the
I
story
know, that was so
because I'm sure
scary.
he's told everybody, but to hear it from the source is always the best.
Hmm.
But I will tell the tale like I remember it. Lucille had taken an affinity for my teddy bear. This was the one that she was holding the first night I met her. And some people would say that's what she's using to manifest because, like there's,
Yeah, exactly.
Annabelle and all these dolls.
Dolls.
Dolls are actually just idols. And remember, we talked about this in a previous episode. In biblical times, people would make idols so the demon had something to manifest in when it came to visit them. And
Hmm.
so, yes, demons can
I never
inhabit.
liked dolls growing up.
No, they creep me
They
out.
creep me
I
out.
am terrified.
Especially with the ones when the eyes start moving like up and down.
Yeah, I had an aunt we used to go spend summers with on the farm, and she had this room full of
Oh
dolls,
my gosh, me
and they would
too.
make me sleep in there. I'm like, no, you can, yeah,
Mm-mm.
never again. Um, but that's another story. So she says, she's going to try to tell us this story like she remembered it, but because of this teddy bear, um, uh, that probably is what she's using to manifest or at least move around the house. She says later my family would all remember that the teddy bear would just appear in places out of nowhere. That's typical like horror movie stuff.
Hmm.
But we believe that they get this stuff from real stories, I'm sure. So they all thought that it was just me leaving it in different places all over the house. Anyway, my brother, who was 14 at the time, said that he woke up because he could hear breathing. He saw my teddy bear sitting at the foot of his bed. That is terrifying. He
Ah!
he thought that I must be in his room somewhere because I was scared. So remember, she said she would
She
go
go
in
to.
there when she
Hmm.
was scared. So he wakes up and sees this and he's looking for his sister, I'm sure. He called out to me and told me to go back to bed. When he didn't hear me talk back, he began to get angry. All he could hear was breathing and it was getting louder. He says that when he went to turn the lamp on, he saw her standing right next to his bed. Yeah, that you should write that. That's a
Oh
horror.
my
That's a
gosh.
short story horror movie right there. He said that she looked like a little girl with a demonic face. She jumped on him and began to choke him. He was eventually able to scream out, and my parents came to his room. He was scratched, and he had huge red marks on his neck. Yeah, you can tell that story. You can make that into a scene of a horror movie. Believe it or not, my dad was the one that believed him. My mom was trying to say that it was a dream, but my dad explained that he had felt a presence in the house. Usually it's the mom. And I think
Hmm.
that's why she said, uh, believe it or not, it was my dad, because it's usually the mom that believes first. But she goes on. He said that he thought he saw the teddy bear move by itself. We all sat in the kitchen that night and talked about Lucille. I think there's a social media campaign or something where they have this teddy bear that moves and scares, like people can set it up next to their spouse and it scares them.
Oh my gosh.
So that's taking this scary situation and people using it
Hmm.
for fun, but it would scare you. But anyway, it says I was able to kind of break the spell a little bit when I heard my dad talk about the fact that she may be a demon pretending to be my friend. My next thought was that she was going to be mad if I didn't want her around anymore. I slept in my parents' bed that night, but it got crazy. That night, I could hear her calling me to come down the hall. I did not leave the bed. When I finally fell asleep, I woke up to my mom screaming. She said that she woke up to a demonic face that was only an inch from her face. It pulled her hair and then pressed her into the bed. My dad noticed that something was wrong and jumped off the bed and went to her side. Since I was in the middle, I was the closest to my mom. It was like she couldn't breathe. My dad finally screamed, "Help us, God." That is when everything stopped. My brothers came running down the hall. We were so terrified. We all slept in my parents' room that night. Of course you did. The next day, my dad called a friend who happened to be a pastor. Thank God he came over that same day. When he heard the whole story, he helped us to pray and renounce the permission that I gave to let the little demon in. Things got better quickly, but I would see her from time to time until I was about 13. So about 7 years, this thing was trying to get back in.
Mm-hmm.
She would just be looking at me from my closet, from behind trees, or even in the bathroom at school. Yeah,
Wow.
this needs to be somebody needs to
That gave
take
me
this
the
story.
chills. So, like behind a tree in the bathroom at her school?
Yeah,
So it went outside of the house?
maybe I need to get permission to write this into one of my books. This is good stuff here. Not making fun of your situation, but this is terrifying.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
She goes on to say she wouldn't talk to me. She would just be there watching. Also, one day, my dad saw my teddy bear move while it was on the couch. With my permission, he threw it away. Good, get rid of it. We all got closer to Jesus at that time. And since then, we are all faithful to Jesus. In a weird sort of way, it helped us to strengthen our faith. What I want your listeners to know is that these things are real and they start to come after you when you are young. Very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
They want to destroy you. They are sneaky and they will come as benevolent creatures at first. If a being asks you for permission to come in, don't let it in. Oh, and parents, listen to your children. She has this in all caps. That is very true. Thank you for your podcast, and I have turned you on to some of my parents and siblings. Again, I will try to get my brother to write in and give you the details of his attack. Blessings, Selena. Now, Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Oh my. I was good until the part it's falling that it followed her outside of the house. I didn't think it would go outside of the house, but to follow her in school and behind trees,
Yeah,
that
just
had to have
letting
been
her
so
know that it's still
scary.
there.
Yeah. I would have thought I was crazy.
I'm gonna say something that is a total jerk move. That demon is still following her. She just doesn't see it anymore. There is a concept where, and I believe this too, that kids always have a bigger ability to see into the spirit realm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People, weirdos like me, kind of keep that throughout their life. And God equips us to do that. Some people say that it's a spiritual gift, but a lot of times it's a curse. But um, it's just something that God gives us. And so as she got older, the being was still stalking her, but she was able to see it. But as she got older, she can't see it anymore. But that demon is assigned to her. It's always going to be working on her because demons are always working on all of us.
So it's just waiting for a weak moment but now she knows. She would say, heck no, you can't come in.
For sure. Well, and I would probably say that she may not know this, or maybe she does and just didn't write it. But my suspicions are that she was seeing that thing during difficult times in her life. So maybe she had a bad day at school, she was getting picked
Mm-hmm.
on. And so when a demon is working on us, they're waiting for moments where they can kind of sweep in when we are more likely to give them permissions.
Mm-hmm.
If I am, a spirit filled Christian that just left church with the best worship service and the best sermon ever, that demon isn't going to pop in my car and go, hey, wasn't that a good sermon? That demon might inspire somebody to cut me off. So I say a couple bad words and forget that I'm a Christian and then try to move in. But they're usually more patient than that. They're usually going to say, well, we'll leave him alone for now, but, we'll wait until
You
him and his
lose your
spouse are
job, you have
fighting.
to spend
Yeah.
$5,000 to repair your car.
Yeah. And then you start
And
to
then you
doubt
get
God.
frustrated. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And so, as a 6-year-old going through this experience, I'm sure she was fully aware of the concept of Jesus and accepted Jesus into her life. But, going from your childhood to your teens becomes a very rugged time in life. And I picked that word. It's rugged. It's rough. But, like some people say that that's when what they call poltergeist activity occurs, because the concept of poltergeist, which I actually don't believe in, but I can see where it comes from, is that it's energy that's manifested from the emotions of people. So it's like an entity that we're creating based off of like what we're feeling. And so they say teenagers are usually the ones that are the biggest culprits of poltergeist activity in a home. So when a teenager's going through puberty and, all the craziness that teenagers do,
Yeah.
that's when poltergeists start coming in. But I think if you look at it from the other side of the spectrum, teenagers are rebellious, they're doubting God, and that's when the demons are working on them, and the demons are doing what they can to move from, infestation to oppression into possession, if you want to follow one of the parapsychological models of how demonic possession works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when the demons are working into oppression. So the infestation, you're
Oh,
seeing things
yeah.
move, and then the oppression, they're starting to weigh somebody down so they can gain permission to come in. So that kind of makes sense to me. And so she basically, was able to kind of just keep moving forward. And I love that she wrote in, because I think this person, listener, Selena, you get what we do here. We're just trying to help people, and people need to hear this message. I think Christians are so stuffy. They're so caught in their religiosity
Mm-hmm.
that some topics are just not preached on because they don't fill pews, or people are afraid they're going to offend people. But hopefully, and I think I see this, the world is changing to where people are not so much able to avoid, what would be considered paranormal activity anymore.
Exactly.
It's manifesting. Like we were watching a show last night before this recording about two guys, one of our favorite shows called These Woods Are Haunted.
Yeah.
Recommended to anybody, anytime, anywhere, because some of the creepiest stories you'll ever hear are from the woods. But these gentlemen, these two brothers and their friend, were out fishing, and these dog men attacked them. They barely got in the boat to escape. And, they make it back to the other side of the shore where their like lake house is. And this dude like grabs his wife, and he's crying.
Oh.
This is a man's man, woodsman, hunter, fisher, tough as nails, wearing a flannel shirt while he's telling the story, man, crying. So he saw something, and his brother said, "Did this thing escape from hell?" He goes, "I did my research, and they call it a dog man, but I think it's from hell." And I would be like, "Yeah, it's demonic in nature for sure." But we were watching that, and I would say, 30, 40 years ago, like when the Beast of Bray Road and all that stuff come out, people would be like, "This is crazy." But now I would say you're getting to a place where the majority of people would believe that story before they wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so Christians, we have to know where these things come from.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people come to us and say, "I know you're a Christian and I get all the Jesus stuff, but what about a dog man? What about an imaginary friend? What about Bigfoot? What does the Bible say about this and that?" And if you don't have an answer, if you can't understand Genesis 6, I actually talked to somebody not that long ago who said, "Well, I don't know if all the giants in the Bible were real." Because some things say they were only really 6 feet tall, and the average person back then was like 5 foot or 5'2", so that would look like a giant. And I'm like, okay, I get, defining what a cubit is. Is it a royal cubit? Is, from your elbow to your finger for different people, so if a cubit for a 5'2" guy would only be about a foot.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was 6 cubits, I'm like, come on, man.
Right. Yeah.
I think what it becomes is we have to get real and say that there were these beings that were created from these watcher angels, or these angels that were set over these regions, that made a decision to descend on Mount Hermon and come and meet probably the sons of Ham and their descendants, intermingled with them, had sex with their women in exchange for knowledge, like how to make swords. And
I know that was a great episode we were listening to the other day in the car.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's so cool.
And then, they created these hybrid beings, and then they started being crazy and creating hybrid human animal beings and half angel, half animal beings, these chimerical creatures. And do those things still exist? Well, they must. And it could be as simple as demons are inhabiting a dog and it looks like a dog man, like possessing a dog. Or it could be that these chimerical creatures have been around for thousands of years. That's why people keep seeing the Rougarou in the swamps, even though they've been talking about it for 200 years, because they probably don't die like we do. They probably die because their angelic blood
Mm-hmm.
is not as easily, there's a little more immortality in it than us.
Right.
Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just spitting things out off the top of my head. I have my own theories and I can back them up, but I think what we're saying is we have to get to a place where we stop just minimizing things. And the same thing is true. You can't just call everything a demon.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say, is it demonic? Is it just evil? Is it psychological that the kid is witnessing all this abuse and they're manifesting these things? That's their behavioral problems. We have to look
Mm-hmm.
into all of this if we're truly going to help people. But I believe Selena's story is important because as someone who went to my parents on multiple occasions saying,
Mm-hmm.
there's something in my room. There's something in my room. I saw this in my room. I saw that. I saw this. I saw that. Please leave the lights on. I'm not saying that you shouldn't teach your kid not to fear these things, but teach them how to pray. Pray with them.
Mm-hmm.
Answer the questions. Figure out where they're at in life. Are they going through something at school? Instead of going, oh,
Oh,
it's just your imagination.
nation.
Go back to sleep. Because
That's how they got an imaginary friend. It's where that came from.
yeah. And so when you think about like Christians having an answer to the paranormal, you know, am I saying that Melissa and Anthony have all the answers? No. Do your own research, but stop minimizing this topic. And I don't mean to sound like I'm lecturing you, but I'm kind of cautioning you. Of course, you could turn that around, and which is what a lot of Christians do. Well, you're infatuated with the paranormal. You watch too many paranormal shows. If you have all these horror movies in your house, you're welcoming in demons. Well, there's probably truth to some of that if you're not prayed up and if the intentions of why you're watching these things are, nefarious, or you're curious and
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of doubting God and you're wondering what the other side looks like. Don't watch that.
Exactly.
But
No
if you're
way.
studying this to understand why your family is going through this, or as a good Christian who helps people who are struggling,
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing that drives me crazier than a pastor who will minimize you when you come and say, I think there's a demon in my house.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a pastor and somebody comes to you and you're not equipped with this, just simply say, hey, we don't really do that here. I'm not very skilled and educated. Do you mind if I do a little homework and I'm going to get you a referral?
Mm-hmm.
Not like one of the pastors that I often beat up in my books and in some of my episodes that I worked for. He literally didn't believe that demons did what they did in the Bible and that all they do is like whisper in our ear and influence us. That possession isn't real.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, you are outside of your mind. Like you all like Michael Heiser and so many other people have said before, all it takes is one story to be true and it breaks the whole paradigm that none of it is true.
Mm-hmm.
So is every person who saw an animal on the side of the road seeing a dog man? No, I don't believe that at all.
Mm-mm.
Are there a large percentage of those people that are just making up a story for attention? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But all there needs to be is one true story where somebody
Mhm.
actually saw a dog man to make this whole paradigm shift.
Mhm.
And that's where a Christian would need to be able to say, yes, I actually do believe that you probably saw a dog man. And what I'm concerned about is that demon, that demonic entity saw you as vulnerable. Is there anything going on in your life? I'm not judging you, but I'd like to pray with you because I would hate for it to come back.
Mhm.
Versus a dog
Oh
man.
man.
Like,
Uh-huh.
really? Like,
And we've had letters on both sides, where the pastor says, yes, I can help you, or I'll send you somewhere else, or to send you to someone that can help you that is more equipped in that field versus, no, I don't believe you. You just need to go home and do this and do that, instead of trying to
yeah.
help them.
Well, if you
So
are
yeah,
seeing a demon, it's because you're in sin. I haven't seen you in
yeah,
church every week.
exactly.
And have you been tithing? Oh my gosh, I want to
Yeah.
punch those
But I'm
people.
so glad that her parents believed them, her and her brother, that they just didn't sweep this under the rug and, took it as, we're just in a new house. It's just a move. You'll be okay. But for them to see all the activity, it always kind of disturbs me when it spreads and the other family members can see it,
Yeah,
you
because
know?
then it's real.
Yeah, other than just isolated on one person, but when it starts attacking the other family members and exposing itself that of other people maybe not can see it, but can see the activity, that gives me the
Yeah.
heebie-jeebies.
Well,
It's
because if one
scary.
person's saying it, it seems isolated. If,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to dismiss, but when the whole family starts seeing it, it not only makes it real, but I think what you're saying is that it's stepped up. It's in the later stages.
Exactly. Yeah. It
Yeah.
stepped up his game. It's on.
Yeah. It's ready to make a big move for sure.
And it either could have destroyed their family, but in this letter, it brought them closer together.
Yeah. Which is the kind of, I'm going to say this is going to sound weird, but it's kind of the risk that the demons take, because
Oh,
if they
yeah.
shoot their shot and it doesn't work, they usually push people towards God.
Mm-hmm.
So because they're flawed beings, they do their best,
Right.
and in this case, I think it's beautiful that it ended
Mm-hmm.
up this way, because Selena was on the path to probably be a bad kid, destroy her whole childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this was happening in a short period of time, you can imagine if this thing worked on her for years,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you think about it, may be what happens to some of these kids that end up doing horrible things.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
long has a demon been working on them? And this is, I try not to tell people what to think and how to be. I try to just kind of put it out there. But anybody who thinks that a kid could go into a school and shoot a bunch of their students or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
their peers, there's something demonic behind it. I'm not trying to minimize people's feelings about accountability and what should happen to those kids, but that to me speaks of a huge spiritual battle that was lost.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can help people understand what this spiritual battle is, then parents of a kid who is struggling can get the kid help, not only psychologically, but also spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, well, we don't believe in spirituality, so we're just going to take them to a therapist. Well, why is the therapist not helping? Well, it's because, I didn't say religion, I said spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Help to get this kid's spirituality intact, because that's where
Mm-hmm.
your morality comes from. We
Right.
all think
Exactly.
crazy stuff,
Yeah.
but we have something in us that says, you don't do that. In the car, when somebody cuts you off, you all think like, I'm gonna ram this guy, and then you think that's stupid.
I always say, I wish there was a button that we could press and the other person can hear what I'm saying to
Yeah.
them. And then I go, no, they probably don't want to hear.
Yeah, because it's
They
there.
pull me out and beat me up.
We have like a self-regulator that says that's a dumb idea, but when you lose that morality, and so you can see that's what demons are doing. So in conclusion, let's just say this. um Selena, again, appreciate your letter. We
Mm-hmm.
want you to hear that these things are real. They work on us from childhood all the way through your life. The solution to this all is to just give your life over to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Give it to him in a way that you become in a relationship with him. We hear all these terms like give your life to God, welcome Jesus into your heart, all those things. And I don't disagree with those, but it's really about just having a relationship with Jesus. Jesus, I believe in you. Here's my stuff. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to work hard. Please help to change me the way you want me to. Transform me by the renewing of my mind, like it says in your
Mm-hmm.
word. And
Mm-hmm.
so I know that's a process, but I'm willing to walk this with you. I have these demonic entities that are coming after me. Your word says you've defeated them. Jesus, you showed us examples on earth how they were afraid of you. Step in on my behalf. And you will find that these demonic entities, they they have to treat you different, and they have to come at you in different ways, and you are always learning new ways they come at you, versus if you're wide open and vulnerable, you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a sitting duck.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what this is about. Spiritual warfare is very subtle. Even Christians, if you're listening but you're struggling with depression, one of the things it'll tell you is you're not supposed to be struggling with depression. You're supposed to be full of joy. See, God's not real, or
Mhm.
God doesn't love you. You heard that pastor say everybody's forgiven, but not you. You know that. You could feel it. This is what a demon will say to you.
Oh yeah.
That's a different game plan than if somebody who hates God,
Mhm.
demon's going to say, yeah, keep hating that God. Keep, read
Mhm.
this book that talks about how it's all about you and not about submitting to some God.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
See, the demonic ploys are different. And when you understand that Jesus loves you, he'll coach you.
Mhm.
I can think of a time very recently where I was kind of ruminating on something that, in my personal life that I just feel like it's like unnecessary, but I'm still having to deal with it. And, I was kind of not slipping into a depression, but more slipping into like an anger
Mhm.
about it. And maybe, I've always say that, anger is just depression that's growing mature. So I'm bummed about it, I guess, and it's getting me angry. But he just sat back and said, "This isn't forever." Just one little voice in my head, it wasn't an audible voice. I've heard an audible voice, but it was a voice in my head that says, "This isn't forever." And I may have to deal with it for a couple more years, but if that's all it is, that's good. But
Mhm.
then I thought it's not even really that bad, and I'm like, there's a demonic ploy.
Yep.
And just
Exactly.
that's
Mhm.
that's what the Holy Spirit can do for you.
Mhm.
He didn't need to give me a 40-minute sermon on why my thinking was wrong. He just waited for the right moment in
Mhm.
the right time where I would hear the voice. He said it, and it changed my perspective.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean 2 weeks from now that same thing isn't going to bother me, but that perspective now exists in me.
Yeah.
And that's what we would want you to understand about these demons.
Mhm.
And so if you're a youngster, if you're older, if you've had one of these your whole life and it still kind of has manifested in different ways and you see this, reach out to us. We'd love to hear your
Mhm.
story. We'd love
Mhm.
to pray for you, with you. If you have a story like Celine that you think can help others, Selena, I keep calling her Celine. Selena, um, write to us so we can share it with the listeners, because we're not the teachers here. We're all just part of the teaching team.
Mhm.
And we want you to also help us get this message across.
And I
So
bet her story is more common. I'm sure it's just really not talked about as
I
much.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I think
Mhm.
there's probably 500 people that if they heard this could
Could
write
go.
a similar letter.
Mhm.
And that's usually how these things go anyway. People
Mhm.
say that happened to me too. And so, we just want to say, lastly, a little prayer, and then we'll call it a day, so my voice can heal for next week's stuff. So, God, we just pray for anybody listening who is struggling in spiritual warfare, which, if I'm honest, is all of us. But sometimes those levels get too much to bear. Sometimes our focus is off of you. Sometimes we just are frustrated at you and don't want to turn to you because we're stubborn types of people. But God, I just pray that you would give us that audible voice, give us direction, be a light unto our feet and a lamp unto our path. Make sure that you remind us, because we need that, God, that you love us. Just send us those little subtle reminders that will catch us right at the right moment, even as we're throwing our tantrums. God, and some of us are in spiritual warfare and don't even really know how we got there. Maybe a demon just sees us as important to the kingdom and they made their move. Protect us, God. Send your angels in front of us to fight our battles before us, and put always in our mind that you are the victor and that we simply turn to you and you win this battle that you've already won in our lives. And so, God, we thank you for this podcast, for people that write in, for people that are listening. And we pray for everybody in their specific situation. And we pray that if they are so inclined, that they would reach out to us and that we would be a good help to them. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Just a reminder, this podcast is written and produced by us, Anthony and Melissa Corelli. This program is copyright The Struggle LLC. Shout out to Todd Kozinka at Todd K Voiceovers. To learn more about us, visit thestruggleseries.com. Should tell you everything about us you need to know, what's going on with us. If you do have a story of your own, you can reach out to us at the Deliverance Project Podcast at gmail.com, or feel free to DM us on any of the socials. Just make sure you put some sort of indicator on there that it's about the podcast, so we don't think you're one of the 8,000 spammers that hits us every week. Thank you for joining us, and may God bless you and bring you peace.
Thank you for listening to The Deliverance Project. Make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and we will see you next time.